Hello everyone! Today we are going to talk about a captivating topic, vaccines. Did you know that more than 6.47 billion doses have been administered across 184 countries, according to Bloomberg? Humans have benefited from the vaccines for more than 2 centuries, yet the road to effective vaccines has been bumpy and difficult to cross. In today's video, we will be talking, as you understood, about vaccines. So, what is the history of vaccines? What are the developments of them have gone throughout history? And how much do we invest in producing them? We will answer these questions and more. The world's first ever vaccine was developed in the 1790s at the hands of Edward Jenner. Jenner inoculated an 8-year-old boy by taking a sample from a cowpox lesion on a milkmaid's hand. But how did Jenner, a country doctor, formulate the vaccine concept, you ask? Well, his discovery relied extensively on knowledge of the local customs of farming communities and the awareness that milkmaids infected with cowpox were immune to subsequent outbreaks or smallpox that periodically swept through the area. If you're thinking, there is no way that he accomplished all of this with only the knowledge of the local customs, then you are absolutely right. Jenner applied the scientific method of observation and experimentation to this wisdom, ultimately conducting one of the world's first clinical trials. Jenner also profited from his training as a wide-ranging generalist with a broad knowledge of science and medicine. For example, before devoting himself to private practice, Jenner focused on natural history. The seed of the vaccine idea was planted in his head after hearing a Bristol milkmaid boast, "I shall never have smallpox, for I have had cowpox. I shall never have an ugly pock-marked face." 2 decades later, he translated that farming law into the guiding principle of his cowpox inoculation hypothesis. His connaissance that animals were implicated and necessary for vaccine production was truly farsighted. It foreshadowed later use of cows, guinea pigs, rabbits, and even chicken eggs in vaccine production. However, this made many people hostile to the idea of injecting in their bodies with foreign animal products. It seems that they would rather die than believe in science. Vaccines train your immune system to create antibodies, just as it does when it's exposed to a disease. However, because vaccines contain only killed or weakened forms of germs like viruses or bacteria, they do not cause the disease or put you at risk of its complications. Quiz time! In your opinion, is there a link between vaccines and autism? We will find out together at the end of the video. Now that we know the history of vaccines, one can only wonder how they work. Vaccines contain weakened or inactive parts of a particular organism, the antigen, that triggers an immune response within the body. Newer vaccines contain the blueprint for producing antigens rather than the antigen itself. Regardless of whether the vaccine is made up of the antigen itself or the blueprint, so that the body will produce the antigen. This weakened version will not cause a disease in the person receiving the vaccine, but it will prompt the immune system to respond much as it would have on its first reaction to the actual pathogen. Some vaccines require multiple doses, given weeks or months apart. This is sometimes needed to allow for the production of long-lived antibodies and development of memory cells. In this way, the body is trained to fight the specific disease-causing organism, building up memory of the pathogen so as to rapidly fight it if and when exposed in the future. So, in other words, it is the same when Batman delivers the already beaten up bad guy to the police for them to only identify them and lock them up. The vaccine shot contains a beat up and weakened disease and the little police in our body, we just identify it and come up with ways to beat the disease. Researchers had to first grow the viruses or bacteria with which to develop vaccinations in big quantities and with excellent consistency before they could develop vaccines that could be mass-produced. Viruses cannot replicate on their own and must infect living cells, unlike bacteria, which may be produced in a laboratory environment when placed in an appropriate growth medium. When a virus infects a cell, it makes new copies of itself using the cell's own components. While material for early bacterial vaccines could be produced in a lab without the use of laboratory animals, researchers working on viral vaccine material encountered an additional obstacle. They were constrained to collecting materials from infected animal hosts because procedures for generating viruses outside of living hosts were not yet available. During the early stages of developing a polio vaccine, scientists realized that the virus could cause disease not only in humans but also in monkeys. This resulted in early field trials for vaccine candidates created using material collected from polio-infected monkeys, such as monkey spinal cord in the 1930s. These candidates proved harmful, including paralysis in the limb where the vaccine was injected. Vaccines produced from nervous system tissue have a greater adverse effect profile than those developed through other approaches. The studies were terminated, and researchers moved on to discover another means to culture the virus for vaccine development. Many researchers in the 1930s and 1940s were motivated by the prospect of generating poliovirus in the lab without the use of living animals. Cell cultures are the process of growing cells in a culture dish with the help of a growth media, such as collagen. They provide a level of control not possible with living animals, as well as the resources to enable large-scale virus generation. Early attempts to develop poliovirus in culture, on the other hand, failed miserably. The Rockefeller Institute, Albert Sabin and Peter Orlitzky successfully cultivated poliovirus in a culture of brain tissue from a human embryo in 1936. The virus developed rapidly, which was encouraging, but Sabin and Orlitzky were worried about adopting it as a vaccine starting material, thinking that the vaccine recipients may suffer nervous system damage. They attempted but failed to develop poliovirus in cultures using tissue obtained from different sources. Since Jenner's discovery, governments have been investing huge amounts of both money and time. Initially, vaccines were considered a matter of national pride and prestige. Vaccine programs became worldwide once the WHO, World Health Organization, and allied organizations such as United Nations Children's Fund were established. The API, Expanded Program on Immunization, for example, was started by the WHO in 1974 with the objective of substantially boosting immunization rates among children in poor countries. Did you know? According to the Health Policy Watch News, governments have spent at least 93 billion euros on COVID-19 vaccines and therapeutics globally since the beginning of the pandemic. Not all vaccines are given as shots. Some vaccines are given orally. The CDC has reported a 99% reduction in the incidence of bacterial meningitis caused by Haemophilus influenzae since the introduction of the vaccination against the disease in 1988. Vaccines caused herd immunity, which means if the majority of people in a community have been vaccinated against a disease, an unvaccinated person is less likely to get sick because others are less likely to get sick and spread the disease. Here are some anecdotes about vaccines. As you understood, Edward Jenner was the first person to develop vaccines. Thanks to the vaccines, before the COVID, we were estimating about 2-3 million people saved each year. Vaccines train your immune system to create antibodies, just as it does when it is exposed to a disease. However, because vaccines contain only killed or weakened forms of germs like viruses or bacteria, they do not cause a disease or put you at risk of its complications, such as cancer, pneumonia, polio, cholera, and many more. Some other vaccines are currently under development or being piloted, including those that protect against Ebola or malaria, but are not yet widely available globally. So, have you found it? Is there a link between vaccines and autism? If you answered no, then you are correct. Researchers have proved over and over that there is no link between vaccines and autism. Thank you all for watching this video. Please give me your comments on the ways I can provide you with a more immersive experience in my next videos. If you like it, do not hesitate to share it with your friends and do not forget to smash that blue thumbs up button.